we were using Zoom or Google Meet, and it was kind of all over the place, trying to figure out what worked best for each teacher. And then we as specials teachers in some buildings, we kept our regular schedule. In other buildings, we were only teaching in the afternoon, so then that cut down on our amount of time to teach the students. So instead of seeing them every week, we maybe only saw them every other week. And of those students and of those few times that we could see them, we only had 50% or less that attended. They would have their cameras off, or they would be on mute. Sometimes I would call on a student that had their camera off just to kind of check in. Crickets, they didn't answer, like they had just come, turned it on, and left. So it's really hard to know who you were reaching and who you were not reaching. And then when we went back in March in a hybrid model, kind of similar to what Paul said, like definitely some students made some great gains, but again, we didn't have consistent attendance from the students that came. They were only coming 2 days a week, and it was just a very unusual situation, very difficult.
I'm Julie Adams. I teach 7th grade health and phys ed, and last year I taught computers virtually. It was interesting. I typed mine up, and I'm going to read it because it's very similar to a lot of things that they said. But I said, in Livonia, we started off remote, then we went in person, we went back to remote, then second semester we were in person. We didn't do the hybrid model, but I taught some days virtually and some days in person because we had Livonia virtual last year, so that was confusing, and it was different times. So there was these times for in person and this, and I always got there, but I did. I feel like most people, parents, students, and staff felt one extreme way or the other about the virus, masks, online learning, etc. So this made it very difficult to empathize, understand, help, or please our students and their families. Teachers had to learn a whole new way to teach, and kids had to figure out how to learn from home, online, with spotty Wi-Fi, sharing computers, babysitting their siblings, distractions from siblings or other family members who were working from home. And I mean, there was one student I was trying to get a hold of, and finally he came back and he was like, oh, I was chasing down the UPS man because they delivered the wrong package to us. And I was like, okay. I mean, what do you say to that? I don't know. I also just put on here, and maybe this could be at the end, but I don't want people to think that we think that teachers are the only ones that had it rough. Obviously, everyone struggled during this time, but it was just so difficult, I think, because we were working with kids, that they had so many challenges that they had to deal with that, I mean, I had a student that just never came, and then I found out she has to babysit all of her siblings. And it's like, you know, how are they supposed to learn? So it was just really challenging.
Thanks. I've got a few written responses that were submitted to me. Amanda Jacobs, Paul's wife, also a teacher, and she said it was really, really tough. All of a sudden, our whole system just flipped upside down. I was learning how to use all this technology, which I was not confident in, and all in about 2 weeks, so that students wouldn't miss out on learning. Wearing masks has been different as well as the technology piece. Both have been a challenge. I think one of the biggest challenges for me was not being able to hug my students or give them high fives. I work with younger students who love hugs and need that contact with their teachers. And then her dad, Michael French, it's a family of teachers, said that he's a school librarian, and he said that my district decided that checking out library books was too risky, so I worked as a reading interventionist, helping small groups of students with their reading. It was all online until February, and I faced the challenge of doing something new and getting back into something earlier, into some earlier teaching skills that I hadn't used in a long time, while also learning new programs and how to work with kids over Zoom. Heather Brubaker, elementary school teacher, and she said that this past school year was a year like none other. It was mentally and physically exhausting. As a teacher, you are trained to be flexible and to be able to switch gears at a moment's notice, but this year took that to a whole other level. From going remote to in-person, then back to remote, and finally back in-person was a huge challenge. It was also a challenge to teach my students that were in the classroom and also teach the students who were in quarantine. And finally, Andrea Moyer, Dr. Moyer, who's a professor of biology at Oakland University, said, during the pandemic, I participated in online teaching. This was different in both good and bad ways. One of the advantages was that we were offered training opportunities to improve the quality of online instruction, and this greatly improved my delivery of online lectures and materials. One of the disadvantages was that students were overwhelmed by spending many hours online for preparation, lectures, studying, and exams. The lack of social connections and a variety of on-screen learning opportunities was exhausting for some, and I faced the challenge of keeping those students motivated, engaged, and connected while supporting them academically and personally. So this kind of rolls into our next question, which is, what challenges have you overcome?